Please welcome the Commissioner of the United States Commission on International Religious Freedom, Nadine Maenza.
Thank you so much. It's such an honor to be here with you this morning. Thank you. 1 year ago, on July 22nd, 2018, in the middle of the night, Iranian police officers attempted to break down the front door of Pastor Youssef Nadakani's home. When his son opened the door, they threw him to the ground using an electric taser and brutally beat Pastor Nadakani in front of his wife and children. Because of his faith, he'd already served 3 years in prison. He even had a death sentence for apostasy overturned in 2012, which he received because he claimed his constitutional right, using Iran's constitution, to exempt his children from being taught the Quran in school because they were not Muslims. Even though he was raised in a non-religious home, Iran considered his family Muslims, which meant him becoming a Christian even as a child was considered blasphemy. And that is punishable by death in Iran and several other countries nearby. It has been reported that a judge asked Pastor Nadakani to repent. And he said, repent means to return. What would I return to? And he said, to the religion of your ancestors. But Pastor Nadakani refused. He did eventually get that sentence overturned because of pressure from the international community. We need to raise that kind of pressure for him once again, as he is now serving 10 years in the notorious Evin prison in Tehran, a place known for its horrific conditions. I have adopted him as a religious prisoner of conscience at the U.S. Commission on International Religious Freedom, also called USCIRF, where I was appointed by President Trump last May to serve as a commissioner. And I just was alerted to the fact that your congressman, Congressman Don Glamborn, is also adopting Pastor Youssef Nadakani. So hopefully we can work together to help raise awareness of his plight and help get him free. So how many of you guys are familiar with the U.S. Commission on International Religious Freedom? So we were formed 20 years ago by Ambassador Brownback when he was a senator, Rick Santorum, Frank Wolf, a whole bunch of wonderful advocates for religious freedom as an independent watchdog, basically for the U.S. government. So instead of, rather than considering the bilateral relationship with countries the way the State Department must do, USCIRF, we are laser focused only on religious freedom. So what we do is we make policy recommendations to the President, the State Department, and Congress on how they can move countries towards religious freedom. And you can learn more about what we do at uscirf.gov and also at patriotvoices.com where I work, where we also link to a lot of great resources. Many of you are familiar with a former prisoner of conscience we advocated for, Andrew Brunson, who spoke here yesterday. As many of you know, he served 2 years in a Turkish prison on false charges. But there's no doubt that your tweets and social media posts and all the advocacy a lot of you were involved in helped raise awareness of his unfair imprisonment. And we are also thankful that our own government advocated for him at the highest levels, including Donald Trump. I get asked pretty regularly, should we be talking about these kind of issues when there are so many domestic problems here at home? And my answer is always the same, which is, yes, we can walk and chew gum at the same time. So we can continue to talk about important domestic policies the way we have all weekend, and we can also help use our power as a country to help incentivize other countries to move towards religious freedom. I have been fortunate to partner with Senator Rick Santorum at Patriot Voices. What we do there is we really focus on working family policies, so things like health care, paid family leave, the dignity of all life. So we find that religious freedom fits perfectly among the issues we care about. And as a Christian, I am inspired by Hebrews 13:3 that says, remember them that are in bonds, as if bound with them, and them that which suffer adversity, as being yourselves also in the body. So for me, this is a personal passion to advocate those suffering because of their faith, even if it's a faith different than my own. The UN Ambassador for International Religious Freedom, Sam Brownback, who you'll hear from shortly, has done an extraordinary job advocating for freedom of religion and belief for all. In fact, next week, he will be joining Secretary of State Mike Pompeo in hosting the Second Ministerial for Religious Freedom at the State Department, where over 80 countries are expected to send cabinet-level representatives to advocate, to talk about religious freedom. It's hard to overstate the impact this will have for Christians and other religious minorities around the world that are struggling to practice their faith. and in some instances, struggling to survive. While violent persecution is often what drives the narrative about religious freedom, marginalization is a way of life for Christians and other religious minorities around the world. What that means is sometimes they can't get a job to support their family. It means that they can't find housing. Their children can't go to school, and if they do, they deal with severe discrimination. It means the freedoms that exist in their communities aren't available to them simply because of their faith. I just returned from an official USURF delegation trip to Burma, also called Myanmar, where I met with Muslims, Christians, and other religious minorities that are being marginalized and persecuted because they are not Buddhists. While most Buddhists in the country are peaceful, there's a growing number of radical Buddhists who use hate speech and violence against Christians and Muslims and other religious minorities. And much of this violence has occurred at the hands of the military, who support these radical Buddhists and even fund them. On August 25th, 2017, the military led an attack on Muslims in the Rakhine state of Burma, forcing over 700,000 to flee over the course of just a few days and leave everything to go to neighboring Bangladesh. I met with dozens of these victims in my own capacity just a few weeks ago in Cox's Bazar, Bangladesh, where over 1 million are currently living in slum-type conditions, unable to return back to their homes. I heard about how imams were targeted first, mosques and houses burnt to the ground, often with elderly or sick residents inside. Then they were razed so that no one could easily return home. Almost everyone I met, and I met dozens of people, had a loved one who was killed during those few days. A husband, a wife, a brother, a sister, mother, father, even children. Rape was used as a weapon, and the number of girls and women victimized is astounding. United Nations investigators have reported that it has hallmarks of genocide. The US government has called it ethnic cleansing, although we at USURF have recommended the terms crimes against humanity or even genocide. The same military who committed these atrocities is still sharing power right now with the civilian government, headed by former Nobel Peace Prize winner Aung San Suu Kyi. A former political prisoner herself, it was a surprise and a disappointment to the entire world when she refused to condemn the violence. The military acts with impunity and is still oppressing Muslims around the country, but also going against Christians in the Kachin state and the Shin state and around the entire country, as I testified before Congress about this very thing about Christians there just a few weeks ago. Last year, the GOP-run House of Representatives passed a pretty harsh bill, a bipartisan bill. I think only one person voted against it, condemning the violence, but the US Senate has refused to act. And there are currently 2 bills, right now a bill in each, the House and the Senate, and we really hope that you'll help us support these bills so that they will pass. If we do nothing, and please listen to this, if we do nothing, we are sending a chilling message to the world that governments can commit the worst atrocities against their own people with no repercussions. I fear what that means for the world. How many times can we say never again? President Trump has made international religious freedom a priority for this administration. In fact, there has never been an administration more focused on this event, this right for all people, regardless of what country, yeah, absolutely, regardless of what country you live in, or even what faith you have, even if you have no faith at all. How can you help? Well, one way you can help is to help raise awareness. You can tweet, you can follow people like me, my colleague Johnny Moore, who was here last night, Ambassador Brownback, Bob Fu, a lot of the advocates for religious freedom you'll be hearing from, and share their stories and follow others. You can follow USURF, the State Department. There's a lot of information out there with these stories and help raise awareness of what's happening, because I think most people just don't know. Our media is just not covering this. The administration also needs a Congress that is more engaged. You can contact your member of Congress and senators and ask them to make religious freedom a priority in foreign policy. You can also ask them to support legislation that condemns the violence in Burma. In fact, at patriotvoices.com, if you go there right now, it just takes 2 minutes to send a quick email doing those very same things. You know, at Patriot Voices, we also advocated and did the same type of advocacy for Christians and Yazidis in Iraq. You know, it shouldn't matter what religion is experiencing this level of persecution. We should be supporting policies that help stop the violence and bring justice and accountability. And since many of you have relationships with your own congressman or woman, I would ask that you also have conversations with them about how important religious freedom is. Together, we can help bring relief to those who are suffering simply because of their faith. Unfortunately, there are more countries that have egregious religious freedom violations than I have time to talk about this morning, as you probably know, including China, North Korea, Nigeria, Pakistan, Russia, Saudi Arabia, Vietnam, and many others. USURF produces an annual report that details these abuses and lists recommendations. I would suggest that you begin reading about the countries that you're interested in at USURF and other places, and then start sharing those stories. I'm sure you agree that we are extremely fortunate to live in such an exceptional country that cares about the persecution and marginalization of others around the world. Thank you so much for your time this morning, and God bless America.